All right, strap yourselves in. We're going deep today.
Deeper than usual.
Oh, yeah. We're talking Patrick Kearney, the trash bag killer.
Ooh, okay. That's a heavy one.
No kidding. This guy, he was something else. Seemed totally normal on the outside.
Right, the whole ordinary guy, extraordinary evil thing.
Exactly. But man, his crimes, absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
We're going to try to figure out what turned him into a monster.
Well, good luck with that. I mean, sometimes there just aren't easy answers, are there?
Yeah, you're right. But that's kind of the point of this whole deep dive, right? Trying to make sense of the senseless. We had a ton of material to go through on this one.
Let me guess. Wikipedia rabbit hole.
Guilty as charged. But also some really in-depth stuff from the crime library. Even found a podcast episode that dedicated a whole season to Kearney.
Wow, a whole season. He must have been quite the character.
Character might be putting it lightly. We also dug up some old forum discussions, back when those were still a thing.
Oh, yeah, the Wild West of the internet.
Exactly. So our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to piece together all these different perspectives and try to understand who Patrick Kearney was, what made him tick, and how he fits into that whole freeway killer phenomenon that gripped California in the 70s.
Sounds like a fascinating, albeit disturbing, journey. Lead the way.
So let's start at the beginning. Kearney was born in 1939, East Los Angeles. And the sources paint a pretty bleak picture of his childhood. Lots of bullying, feeling isolated, that kind of thing.
The classic troubled childhood narrative.
Yeah, but there's a catch. Some sources describe his upbringing as relatively normal. So who do we believe?
Right, because everyone's got an angle, especially when you're dealing with someone like Kearney. Probably trying to spin his own story, playing the victim card.
Exactly. It's a reminder that in true crime, just like in life, the truth is often slippery.
Truth is a tricky thing for sure. So what's the story Kearney was peddling?
Oh, he claimed to have had it rough. Bedwetting as a kid, leading to abuse. Said he was ostracized, showed signs of autism, the whole 9 yards. But who knows how much of that is true?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, trauma can manifest in some pretty strange ways.
Right. But we also have to consider, was he embellishing to gain sympathy? Maybe even justify his actions later on?
It's a good question, one that probably won't have a clear answer.
And here's where things get even creepier. There's an incident from his childhood that just sends chills down my spine. Apparently, he kidnapped a 3-year-old boy.
He kidnapped a kid. How old was he at the time?
5.
5 years old. You're kidding, right?
Nope. 5 years old, and he kidnaps another child. It's almost like a premonition of what's to come.
Whoa. Talk about foreshadowing. Was there any fallout from that incident? I mean, a 5-year-old kidnapper, that's got to raise some red flags.
Well, it seems like it was resolved without any serious consequences. But looking back, it's hard not to see it as a warning sign, right? A glimpse into the darkness that was brewing inside him.
Definitely. Makes you wonder if anyone even recognized it back then.
So fast forward a few years. 1962, Kearney enlists in the Air Force. But his military career was pretty short-lived, discharged after just 3 years. And the sources are pretty vague about why.
Huh. Another mystery. You'd think there'd be more info on his military record. Wonder if it's connected to, his later activities.
Yeah, it's definitely a gap in the timeline that raises some questions. And then, 1967, things take a very dark turn. Kearney commits his first confirmed murder. A 19-year-old hitchhiker, shot in the head.
So it begins, and it doesn't stop there, does it?
Nope. He kills 2 more that same year. That rapid escalation is pretty chilling, right? Like a switch flip, and this monster was unleashed.
Yeah, and once that switch flips, it's hard to turn it back off.
And as we delve into Kearney's MO, it's clear this wasn't just random violence. This guy was calculated, methodical, almost like he was following a blueprint.
A blueprint for murder.
Exactly. Young men, mostly, often hitchhikers. Sometimes guys he met at gay bars. Always the same weapon. A .22 caliber pistol, shot to the temple, quick, clean, efficient.
The .22, it's quiet too, isn't it? Easy to control.
Right. Like he wanted to be in complete control. And it gets even more disturbing when you look at what he did after the killings.
Oh, I think I can guess where this is going. We are talking about the trash bag killer, after all.
Yeah, it's the stuff of nightmares. Necrophilia, mutilation. He used a hacksaw. He would drain their blood, even bathe body parts. It was ritualistic, almost like he was trying to erase them completely.
Ugh, that's just awful. And the trash bags, that's how he got his nickname, right?
Yeah, industrial-grade trash bags. He'd wrap the bodies meticulously, often got them from his work at Hughes Aircraft.
Hughes Aircraft? He was an engineer. Seriously.
Yep. Successful engineer by day, cold-blooded killer by night. It's mind-boggling, right?
It's like something out of a movie. The seemingly normal guy with this incredibly dark secret.
And for years, he gets away with it. Just blends in, hides in plain sight.
It's a terrifying thought. Evil wearing a mask of normalcy.
Now, before we get to how it all came crashing down, we need to talk about David Hill, Kearney's longtime partner.
Ah, yes. The accomplice question.
Right. Did he know? Was he involved? Or was he completely oblivious to the monster sleeping next to him?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Kearney claimed that Hill had no clue about the murders.
But there are some incidents, like the one with Tony Stewart, that make you wonder.
Tony Stewart, who's that?
He wrote a book about his encounter with Kearney. He was hitchhiking, and Kearney picked him up, pretending to be a doctor.
A doctor? Seriously, what was he up to?
Well, he offered Stewart a beer, started acting really strange, pulled out a stethoscope, the whole bit.
Creepy.
Yeah, and this happened around the same time Kearney's killing spree really ramped up.
Interesting. So you're thinking there might be a connection between this incident and the murders?
It's possible, right? Maybe something about this encounter, or maybe something in his relationship with Hill at the time, triggered something in Kearney.
Yeah, who knows what goes on behind closed doors.
And here's another crucial piece of the puzzle. The whole Freeway killers context. California in the 70s was a hotbed for serial killers.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that. A truly terrifying time.
You had William Bonin, Randy Kraft, and of course our guy Patrick Kearney, all operating at the same time. Imagine the fear.
And the confusion for law enforcement, trying to connect the dots with multiple killers on the loose.
It must have been chaos. And Kearney, with his meticulous methods, he kind of blended in with all the noise.
Like a chameleon hiding in plain sight. But eventually, every chameleon gets caught.
That's right. And Kearney's downfall. Ironically, it was his connection to David Hill, the very person he claimed was in the dark.
Ah, so the accomplice theory comes back into play.
The murder of John LeMay, a 17-year-old who was involved with Hill, that's what finally brought Kearney down.
Wow, so it all comes full circle. All right, let's hear how this web of deception finally unraveled. So, John LeMay.
He was different from Kearney's usual victims, right? Absolutely. Most of Kearney's victims were, random guys. Picked up hitchhiking or at a bar. But LeMay, he was connected to Kearney through Hill.
Ah, so the walls start closing in, his carefully constructed world starts to crumble.
Exactly. So on March 13th, 1977, LeMay tells a neighbor he's going to meet Dave at a gym.
Dave, wait a minute, that's David Hill, right?
Yep. And Hill had actually given LeMay Kearney's address.
Hold on, so Hill is sending this kid to Kearney's house. What was he thinking?
Yeah, it's a question that's haunted investigators ever since.
Yeah.
Did Hill know about the murders? Was he setting LeMay up? Or was he just, clueless, a pawn in Kearney's game?
Either way, it's pretty messed up. So what happened next?
LeMay shows up at Kearney's place, and Hill's not there. Kearney invites him in, and according to Kearney's confession, he just shoots LeMay. Back of the head, no hesitation.
Wow. Just like that. Seems kind of out of character, doesn't it? I mean, Kearney was usually so meticulous, so controlled.
Right. It's almost like this murder was different, more impulsive, more personal.
Maybe the connection to Hill, the fact that it was someone from his inner circle, maybe that triggered something different in him.
Yeah, like a break from his usual routine. And that impulsiveness, that's what ultimately did him in.
How so?
Well, unlike many of his other victims, LeMay was connected. People noticed he was missing right away. And the fact that he was last seen going to meet Hill, well, that put the spotlight right on Kearney.
The heat is on. So how does Kearney react?
Panic. He and Hill, they take off. Flee to El Paso, Texas, trying to disappear.
Makes sense. Run, hide, try to start over. Did it work?
Nope. But here's where things get really weird. Instead of staying on the run, they decide to turn themselves in.
What? They turned themselves in? That's unexpected. Why would they do that?
It's a question that's baffled everyone. Some experts think Kearney, facing the pressure, realizing he couldn't escape forever, wanted to control the narrative. Confess on his own terms, make sure everyone knew exactly what he had done.
So like a final act of control. A twisted way to get the last word.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Or maybe it was a psychological breaking point. The weight of his crimes, the fear, the guilt. Maybe it all became too much.
Wow, that's a heavy thought. So Kearney and Hill, they just walk into the Riverside County Sheriff's Office and announce, hey, we're the killers you're looking for.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Kearney sits down with the investigators, totally calm, collected, and starts confessing to 28 murders.
28 murders. Just like that.
He lays it all out. Details, locations, everything. Even led police to burial sites, helped identify victims that hadn't been linked to him before.
It's almost like he was proud of it, like he wanted to brag about his accomplishments.
Yeah, it's a disturbing thought. But for some serial killers, notoriety is a powerful motivator. It's a way to, leave their mark on the world.
A truly horrifying legacy. So after all that, what happened? Did Kearney get the death penalty?
Nope, he cut a deal. Pleaded guilty to 21 other murders in exchange for a life sentence. But here's the kicker. He could be eligible for parole after just 7 years.
7 years? For 21 murders? That's insane.
Yet, the public was outraged, and rightfully so. Many felt he should have been executed or at least locked up for good.
What about Hill? Did he face any consequences?
He was initially charged with murder, but the charges were dropped. Not enough evidence. Kearney insisted Hill knew nothing, and without anything concrete to tie him to the crimes, they had to let him go.
Wow. So Hill just walks away, disappears into the sunset, and we're left wondering, what was his role in all of this? Another unanswered question in this already baffling case.
We may never know the full story. It's frustrating, but that's often the reality of true crime. We're left with pieces of the puzzle, tantalizing clues, but the complete picture remains elusive.
It's like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. You can see the general outline, but there are always going to be gaps, holes in the story.
So we've covered Kearney's early life, his MO, the gruesome details of his crimes, the whole Freeway killer scene, his capture, the confession, the controversial plea deal. But we've only scratched the surface, haven't we?
We've laid out the facts, the timeline, the key players, but now it's time to go deeper. To try and understand the why. What drove Kearney to commit these horrific acts? What can we learn from his words, his behavior, his chillingly calm demeanor about the mind of a serial killer?
Let's dive into that darkness. Let's explore the psychological factors that might help us unravel the enigma of Patrick Kearney, the trash bag killer. Trying to understand the mind of a serial killer. It's a pretty daunting task. I mean, where do you even start?
Yeah, it's like peering into the abyss, trying to make sense of something that fundamentally defies logic, defies empathy. But I think if we look at Kearney, his personality, there's one thing that really stands out, his meticulousness.
That's true. Everything he did, his crimes especially, was all so carefully planned, so controlled.
Almost obsessive.
Absolutely. From the way he abducted his victim to the executions, the way he disposed of the bodies, everything was executed with this chilling precision.
Like he was following a blueprint.
Exactly. Like some kind of macabre engineering project,
Wait.
which, makes you think.
Makes you think what?
Well, he was an engineer, right? A good one, apparently. Working at Hughes Aircraft, a high-tech company. It makes you wonder if his professional life, his training, if that somehow bled into his crimes.
It's a chilling thought, but you might be onto something. Maybe he saw his victims as just another problem to be solved, another obstacle to be removed with the same calculated efficiency he used in his day job.
Yeah, maybe. And it wasn't just the killings. His post-mortem rituals, the necrophilia, the mutilation, the way he wrapped the bodies, it was also so methodical, so deliberate.
Ritualistic, almost.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
he was trying to, erase them, turn them into objects.
Trophies in his twisted game.
That's a good way to put it. But
Yeah.
why? Why all the control? Why the need to dominate, to obliterate his victims?
Well, I think it all goes back to his insecurities. Remember what the sources said about his childhood? The bullying, the possible abuse?
Yeah, he definitely had a rough time growing up.
Right. And those experiences, they can leave deep scars. They can create this profound sense of inadequacy, a need to assert power, to control others.
So in a twisted way, his crimes were about taking back control, proving his dominance over those he perceived as weaker.
It's a classic pattern in serial killer psychology. The need for power and control, it often stems from deep-seated insecurities, and with Kearney, that need manifested in the most horrific way imaginable.
It's hard to wrap your head around. But what about his demeanor? I mean, he always seemed so calm, so detached. How could he reconcile that with the brutality of his actions?
Compartmentalization. It's a psychological defense mechanism. It allows people to separate different parts of their lives, their actions, even when those actions are completely contradictory.
So he was living a double life, with this wall separating his normal self from his murderous side.
Exactly. And that wall was reinforced by his meticulousness, his ability to detach himself, to plan and execute his crimes without getting emotionally involved.
It's terrifying to think that someone could be capable of that. To function in society, to go to work, interact with people, all while harboring such darkness inside.
It is. And it makes you wonder how many other Patrick Kearneys are out there, hiding in plain sight, their true nature masked by a veneer of normalcy.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but as we wrap up, I can't help but think about all the unanswered questions. The mysteries that still surround this case.
Like what?
Well, we'll probably never know the true number of his victims. I mean, he confessed to 32 murders, but who knows how many more there were?
And then there's David Hill. What was his role, really? Was he a willing participant, or was he just a pawn in Kearney's game?
And, of course, the big one.
Mm-hmm.
Why did he turn himself in? Was it about controlling the narrative? A sudden pang of guilt? Or something else entirely?
Yeah, those are questions that may never be fully answered. But that's often the nature of true crime, isn't it? We're left with pieces of the puzzle, tantalizing clues, but the complete picture remains out of reach.
It's frustrating, but it also keeps us thinking, keeps us searching for answers.
And that's important, because even though we may never fully understand what drove Patrick Kearney, the trash bag killer, the process of trying to understand, of grappling with these difficult questions, that's what keeps us vigilant, keeps us engaged, and hopefully helps us prevent future tragedies.
Well said. And to our listeners, we encourage you to keep digging. Explore the sources we've discussed, research other cases, and most importantly, keep talking about these issues. Because it's through dialogue, through empathy and understanding, that we can hope to make some sense out of the senseless.
And maybe, just maybe, prevent something like this from happening again.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the unsettling world of Patrick Kearney, the trash bag killer. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.